Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Ntsekhe, as Khul has introduced me. I'm the Risk and Environmental Sustainability Director for Tiger Brands. And unfortunately, I was looking at my two gentlemen here, and I thought, geez, if I had to give you guys a brief update of who Tiger Brands is, we'll be here the whole day, right? But basically, we're a food manufacturing organization, 41 manufacturing facilities. Depending on what you have for breakfast, you definitely had something that we produced. If you didn't, you had something at lunch that we produced. If you didn't, dinner, definitely you're going to have something that we had, all right? So my approach in terms of what I'll be taking you through is to basically just share some of the challenges that we went through. It's not going to be very much technical. What the learnings were, how we piggybacked on the experts from an NCP perspective, and then I think towards the latter part, what are the sort of key focus areas that we're looking at in the sort of short to medium term. Oh, does it? Okay, so from a Tiger Brands perspective, when we talk about environmental sustainability, this slide just gives you an indication of what are key thrusts, right? So if anybody knows about Tiger Brands, you know that we're actually quite a old organization, and as a result, a lot of our facilities, right, are quite old. I think if I think about it, within the grain space, perhaps we only have one new bakery in Pietermaritzburg, 1 million facility. The rest of the other portfolio is old. If you look at the groceries portfolio, within the culinary space is probably only mayonnaise plant, which is new. So as a result, anything that you want to do in our facilities perspective, you're talking old technology, old processes. So we just rely on saying, especially with the engineering guys or capital investment guys, to say, guys, as we do re-engineering or we do upgrades to our facilities, let's aspire to be a sustainable facility, right? We get approached by quite a lot of service providers who want to come through and say, oh no, actually, you know what? Why don't you guys look at solar? We get the concept, right? But I'm not going to put 20 million on top of a roof that's like his in personal care a couple of weeks ago, which is about to fall apart, right? So that's one of the things that you need to appreciate when we talk about our facilities and why we haven't actually evolved compared to quite a lot of organizations, right? And then from a water perspective, we take water as one of our big risks, right? We're a food manufacturing organization. Without water, we actually can't produce anything, right? We also don't have the luxury of saying, even if we've treated the water, unless we invest in Rolls-Royce technology, we don't have the luxury of taking that water, treating and putting it back into production, right? We have to actually channel it to other areas, whether it's cleaning of facilities or actually what we do in terms of our garden. I'll share examples of those as we actually go through the slides, okay? And we are members of some of the strategic water initiatives or corporates locally and even also internationally, right? From a water perspective, year in and year out, I think we were probably one of the first food manufacturing organizations that actually participated in the carbon disclosure program in terms of the water footprint disclosures. And we'll continue to do that because we're a JSC listed organization. We have to actually show that it's a strategic focal point for us, and we actually have to adhere to regulatory or compliance legislation in terms of our practices, right? And then I think you read the rest. Obviously from an energy perspective, and I think in the period that I've been in Tiger Brands, the last 5.5 years have been quite exciting because my journey with this gentleman has really been great, specifically within the energy, right? We were probably the first, one of the few food manufacturing organizations that actually participated in the Energy Management Expert Program through NCPC, and we managed to actually get 3 people to pass that program. If you want to do anything tough that keeps you awake, please register for it. So it has great benefits because also it brings in experts from the industry who are coming into your environment if you actually offer your facility, right, as a pilot area. And they're also immediately actually getting good practices being implemented in your environment. Then from a waste perspective with 41 operations, and when I talk 41 operations, mind you, I'm talking manufacturing facilities, I'm not talking depots and distributions, right? So waste is also quite a critical area for us. And I think in a session that I was in earlier on around circular economy, it's a big discussion for us right now, right? In terms of what are we doing as Tiger Brands. We also continue to make mistakes, right? That results in waste streams which are unnecessary. A recent one being a lovely jungle mix, which what do? We went and we actually put on a plastic packaging, which is not recyclable. And unfortunately, you guys frown upon it, and it's not doing very well in the market, right? Because we can't recover it post-consumer, and legislation is asking us to deal with our different waste streams post-consumer, okay? And then from a procurement and products perspective there, that then touches on what do we expect in terms of from our suppliers and our vendors when we bring them on from a procurement perspective, right? So one of our business units is competing with sort of your Mondelez and Nestle, specifically chocolate. So people start talking about sustainable sourcing of cocoa, what are we doing around palm oil derivatives. So we actually have to go out and actually check that our suppliers adhere to some of the sustainable sourcing and sustainability solutions, right, or practices in line with, oh no, you know what, Wellington actually, and I will use it because it's been in the public domain, and we have received phone calls because we're basically their biggest customer. So Wellington, we source oil from them. They're based in PMB. They had a massive tank burst, which actually resulted in extensive environmental harm, right? And those are kind of the questions that I end up being on the receiving end of. And I think I'm probably sick because it just threw me off. Ended up being in PMB all over trying to say, guys, what are you going to do in terms of rehabilitation? Because we're being asked in terms of, you are a supplier, and this is what you've actually done to the environment. Okay, so that procurement and products pillar has not evolved that much. It's really very much focused on our risk portfolio in terms of suppliers, and those are the ones that where there's noise. That's really where we're actually focusing on, and where we actually want to do innovation in terms of going to Nampak, glass, to say, guys, we want to do lightweighting of our mayonnaise or go tomato sauce bottle. How do we actually partner? Because then I have to report on the environmental gains associated with that, okay? Now, specific to why I'm here today, I'm going to get into the water space, right? So when we then look at water, what we do is to say, and I think we do it across the 5 areas that you saw earlier on. Every single one of those areas, there's a set target. So we work on a 3-year period, right, in terms. So when you see this 7.5% reduction, it will be in that fiscal year. But when we then go public, we give a percentage reduction because our investors want to look at a longer period. We give a target and we say it's for a 3-year rolling period, okay? So on a year-to-year basis, the business units are required to actually deliver 7.5%. And the next question is about to be, is this absolute or intensity? We report on both, right? So we look at what the absolute usage is and even also the intensity because we know that conditions actually change. But ultimately, as a group, that's what we look out for in terms of within the year, right? What are the key areas that we look at? So if you look at the portfolio of our business, a lot of the raw materials that we use come from the agricultural space, which is actually a big water risk area for South Africa or from a global perspective, okay? We don't own farms, but we have agriculturalists in-house, right, that work with our farmers where we source, right, our raw materials in order to ensure that environmental and sustainable practices are adhered to, including even the types of fertilizers they use, because that's talking to the soil erosion and things like that, and what does it do in terms of water carry through. So we then work with the farmers, right, from an agricultural perspective. And that's why we focus on it, because of the nature of the commodities that we actually source from the agricultural area, right? Then internally, we have set targets But it's also depending on the type of operation that you're talking about. So if you look at milling, they hardly use any water, right? Okay, so we set internal in-house targets around reducing your water and how you effectively use your water in terms of the different process areas. Plus also from a group perspective, we then influence some of the technology investment decisions. And I use the word influence because if I signed the checkbook, hardly anything would be signed, right? Because I would always want the energy efficient equipment, and I would always want a CIP process that's going to give me water savings. Don't ask me to deliver water savings afterwards. Invest in the right technology up front. So we influence it, and if there's a water treatment plant that needs to be actually purchased, the CapEx has to go through us. And the final decision, which is actually then made by CFO, who signs the check, if they frown upon whatever we have advised on, at least we made the recommendations, the capital investment, right? So that later on, when questions are asked, we have something to fall back on, right? Okay. And then the next pillar then talks to, and I think a lot of this came out of learnings as we started doing assessments in our facilities. So we started with our first assessment, I think 2015. In 2015, Boxburg threw the RECP, and we've just done a whole lot of facilities. And even also now, in terms of the industry water efficiency methodology now being rolled out into our operations. Before you can say, I'm going to go and ask for a water treatment plant, can we first start with recovering the water and finding ways in terms of how we're going to actually recycle it, small thing, and then reuse it. When we did the assessment, I think it was at the beverage plant, right? And I think for me it was quite shocking because I was coming from a very solid beverage environment where I think South African breweries is right up there. And I joined Tucker Brands, and what are we doing? The water comes in through to the filler, we rinse the bottle, we don't recover the water, we fill it, there's residue on the bottle. Once again, we use municipal water to rinse that residue that's sitting on the water. And I think I've forgotten the gentleman who did the assessment for us. That was one of the key highlights that he found. And immediately the guys went back and said, actually, you know what, stage one water can be recovered, and we can use it in terms of when we do our final rinse, right? Which immediately started resulting in savings specific for that facility, okay? At our Paarl Jam factory, we had major issues because of high sugar content, right? In terms of penalties and infringements. But the guys have actually evolved quite well in terms of what are the preliminary treatment solutions that they can actually look at, and once they've treated that water, they actually use both the jam factory and even also the purity factory. They channel the water in terms of the ablution facilities and any sort of facility cleaning, because unfortunately right now we haven't invested in the right technology for them to take that water after it's been treated back into production, right? So you get to Paarl, and everybody's like, it's on day zero, and I'm like, Christopher, you're going to put me in trouble. Have you been watering the gardens? Why is everything looking so green? How much water have you been recovering? Because we were told only so much in terms of Western Cape. No, but actually now literally 100% of all the water we use in our garden and whatever is actually coming from process, right? The fourth one then talks to how do we actually invest in innovative technologies. This one, like I said earlier on, is a winning battle. But I think now that the CapEx actually goes through us from a compliance perspective and a sustainability perspective, and even also as a result of change in leadership, which actually helps, right? Got a new CEO coming in, and he was just not taking any nonsense. He wanted to know, has this actually gone through these particular facilities for them to actually have input, right? So in the last sort of 3 years, we've seen quite a lot of CapEx has been approved, which would have historically been defined as it's just compliance. We're not going to actually grow our portfolio. We're not going to make money out of this. It just doesn't make sense. Why? Because our CFO still asks you, what is the IRR on this thing, right? When we start talking about investing in technologies within this space, it doesn't necessarily give you the numbers that they will be looking at. You get something, but it doesn't. And I think when we talk about water technology investments, because, so let me use Boksburg. Water tariff in South Africa is messed up, right? So people don't look at water in the same view as when I show the percentage increase of energy. And interestingly enough, I think the slide that the one gentleman showed this morning, he was showing 300%. I went into Exco, I think 2 months ago, and I showed them the 600%. And I was like very happy because I just saw Lawrence flabbergasted. What? I didn't realize it was so bad. So when you look at the period beyond the 2007, because I think he put it from 2007, the slide we were looking at this morning, it's actually significantly huge what's happening in the energy space. But do the same thing for water, right? Then build in whatever penalties, right, that your facilities are paying. You'll be horrified. One of our facilities, Boksburg, the culinary facility, on an annual basis, those guys were actually paying close to about 9 to 12 million just on penalties a year because of suspended solids, pH being incorrect. But I mean, when I started going through this and doing the reporting and trying to say, guys, how do you actually just accept this? All they said is, Julie, for years we've been trying to motivate for a water treatment plant. It just hasn't worked. And with just flashing that out, people don't question those kind of things. Because also I think the conversations around these kind of investments have to change because it's also about the right thing to do. What are we really doing and what is the impact that we're doing in terms of the communities where our operations are at, right? And they got their water treatment plant. I think every so often, if they've irritated me, I turn around and I say to my sustainability manager, are you sure they're reporting correctly? I haven't seen one penalty in probably 6 months from these guys, right? And it's working, right? So we just need to extend it to other areas because I think they have a big opportunity in terms of channeling the treated water to other areas so that we save more, okay? And then the last pillar then really talks to how do we actually apply our continuous improvement methodology to deliver water efficiency? And this one just really talks to behavioral change, right? Before I make those big investments, how do I actually apply my CI methodology and understanding where did I go wrong? So I think one of the gentlemen used the example of, and I saw this because when we were motivating for the Boksburg facility, we forced them to implement Power Watch. So I'll be sitting in Bryanston, right? And on Friday, everybody knocks off and the tomato plant doesn't run over the weekend and the ops director comes in. I'm like, dude, compressed air and everything was just all over the whole weekend. And one thing I know for sure, the facility was not running, which talks to behavior change, right? So it's how do you apply your CI methodology in terms of giving transparency and visibility to the facilities for them to know when something is wrong? Because historically, and for quite a lot of our facilities even now, we rely on the municipality to send us the bill, then we react to an after effect. It's 30 days later. If I knew that something went wrong, maybe if somebody had actually looked at Power Watch on Saturday morning, instead of me coming in on Monday and asking them, guys, what happened, right? Somebody could have gotten to the car and actually gone and sorted it out, okay? So ultimately, I think the last part just really touches on, as much as we have quite a lot of constraint in terms of resources from a manning perspective, but we rely on NCPC helping us, right? To make sure that we capture the value chain part, right? And actually having partnered with those key people in the industry, our suppliers, right? So that we grow and also learn from each other. We're quite lean, our team. So anything that I can get from it, when I actually just grab from it. So why do we actually, so when the industry water efficiency program, I don't know what you want me to call it, when it was launched, right? I think at that time was quite an interesting time for us because that's when we were also having the right conversations. So prior to 2 years ago, the only people that ever used to be clapped or remunerated according to the environmental performance was myself and basically my team. right? You give the targets to the operations, whether they meet the target or not, it didn't come back to them. And that's the first thing that Lawrence changed when he came in. So Lawrence is our CEO. So himself and his direct excos, 10% of their short-term incentive is made up of how they perform from an environmental sustainability perspective. Doesn't matter if you're in HR. 10% of your bonus is based on how you're actually performing. So it's a key strategic measure. It has fundamentally changed things for me. I think Kule made a comment some time back to say, yo, this is Julie, what's going on? You know, when you started, you were like, I'm like, hey, sometimes I get tired, Butuan. But you know, if there's really one thing that's really carrying me, is the exciting conversations that are happening in Exco. A couple of weeks ago, I actually had to take the external directors and internal directors, plus the board members, through the risk committee and risk register and actually tell them what are we doing in terms of environmental and what are the risks. It's never been done, ever. I'm not saying in my period, I'm talking ever in the history of Tiger. Why? Because now it's hitting their pockets. And now they also know when they make some of those investment decisions, whether it's actually launching a new product and putting it on the shelf, if you have not taken these considerations in place, don't come and ask me to give you 15 or 21% improvement on a fundamental decision that you never actually thought about like upfront, okay? Even I'm talking about from an MPD perspective, okay? So I think the strategic measure has been like a great thing, knowing that even if we forget every quarter, someone from Lawrence's office says, yeah, can you guys give us where are we on this? Because they actually talk about it. You cannot always rely on just external expertise. As a result, we've been very conscious and deliberate in terms of capability building in the organization, right? And I think when we started, I think I mentioned it to you guys earlier on to say, we were very excited about the energy management, but I think it was highly driven by what we were paying, what was happening. So we actually got quite a lot of people within Tiger Brands on the NCPC program, specifically RCP, steam system optimization, energy management systems, and even also the compressed air for jungle. That was a Western Cape here, okay? And then actually got sort of the technical expertise going in the business so that you actually get other people beyond just yourself doing some of these initiatives. Unfortunately, I should say, I mean, if I look at 2016, of the people that actually passed the ENMS expert program, I'm probably the only one that's still left in the department. The other one left the business. So F&B is actually really enjoying her being there, and I paid for it. Somebody made that comment earlier on. And then the other lady, she's in procurement, but it still helps, right? She's in the packaging space, so every so often, when we want to know what are we doing around innovation, what have you guys done, she gets where I'm coming from, okay? We're embarking on that again in terms of a new pool of engineers getting on some of the courses so that on a continuous basis, people understand why are we doing what we have to do, okay? Water use, water use audit. For us, it's been really critical because, like I said, quite a lot of our facilities still rely on the municipality coming to tell us what did we actually use, right? But you don't even know what your significant energy use is or your significant water usage is, not even from a process perspective. So if I look at Kim Foods, where we actually have, Kim Foods is where we actually produce our mabele and king corn and all of that. So the whole germination process, right? And I with the ops director about this because, Jesus Christ, that guy, for them to eventually understand this is why I wanted the greenhouse that they are now putting up, right? It took 4 years for them to get it, right? Somebody would stand there with a hose pipe of water, and it's like a huge area, like massive, just spraying water on this sorghum so that they start the germination process, but we don't recover it, no way. The whole day, some dude is just spraying what I'm like, guys, no, you're killing me, right? So eventually people got it because we threw a couple of chemical engineers to it because the guys were saying to me, no, if you start talking about these greenhouses of yours, you're going to mess up our germination process. King corn will not taste the same. The king corn, yeah, like really. Yeah, like really, So we did a couple of trials, and here's the thing. After we did the trial, we could actually improve their yields. So not only have I actually saved water in terms of the practice that they were doing, the yield has actually increased, right? So they extended the whole area. But even also from a food quality perspective, it's just really the right thing to do, You just can't cool and holes and appreciate what I'm talking about. Because I share a joke with him to say, I grew up with my belly. And I started working for Tiger Brands, right? And I went to Kim Foods, and I was like, I think I prefer my grandmother's old way of just putting the mabel on a rock, and this process is not for me. But anyways, that's what it is, right? And that's what we use the water audits for. We are not experts in that, right? We really appreciate getting the experts coming in. They bring their data loggers, plug them in, and they say, these are the areas that you need to focus on. Plus also, when we need to make the necessary investment decisions around our online metering solutions, we know where we need to go, okay? I've gotten into trouble with one of the managing directors where I'd managed to prove at one of our facilities that our boiler, I don't want to mention their names, so I have to say this slowly, but our boiler, the guys who were assisting us in terms of running our boilers, that they were really cheating us. So that was a very nice diplomatic way of saying it. In terms of how the contract had been set up. So Craig had done a fabulous assessment, and I came back and I was like, no, my friend, I need to use this report to prove that these guys are making money out of us. We're actually not paying for steam. We're paying for other things, right? But when you start talking about steam meters, it's huge money, right? And you're talking about people who've never actually spent that kind of money. They think, oh, Julie, you've started. And when we actually did a similar approach in terms of snacks and treats, the supply chain exec at that time, he had just started, excited dude. I'm like, Andre and Mondelez, you guys used to have this. Like, yeah, Julie, makes sense. Why don't they actually have a meet on the steam so they know what they're using? So we're like, no, give me 250K. Let's put it in. We'll apologize later, right? And by the time the MD cotton was 6 months later, it had paid for itself, right? He doesn't forget. But it had paid for itself, So that's really the value that we've got out of doing actually quite a lot of our water assessments. And plus also, I think, coming out of that, it informs from a project execution perspective where I've got engineering guys. I'm not convincing them based on what I'm saying. I'm giving them data to say somebody has come in, they're giving a 61 or 72 report, there it is, right? We've just actually successfully managed to get and plus also for Rodocop, and I think we'd really struggled with this one with the previous supply chain exec in terms of getting the approval for the water treatment plant at the beverage plant. It's been approved. So Munya did great. I've hugged him today when I saw him, right? The CapEx has been approved. Your Department of Water Affairs will leave me alone. They're not going to be revoking water license and all these things, right? So it's going to be exciting times for that facility also. And then generally what we then do is, because I think earlier on I shared with you guys to say we're quite a lean team, what we tend to do is to say, okay, I have 41 operations. There's no way that NCPC can actually give me 41 people to go and actually do things at my facilities. I need to pick where I know that once I understand what the recommendations are, how do I do horizontal expansion, right? Make sense, guys? Right. So a simple thing is like we take for granted the regime that comes with just doing, like having a leak detection regime and just go and fix, right? Get engineering to just go out there and say, guys, we're getting quite a lot of compressed air leaks, got quite a lot of water leaks. Let's actually manage it and manage it as an ongoing program. Once you've learned that and you've actually realized some sort of savings in one facility, you don't need someone else to come and tell you the same things. It's something that you can actually easily go out and apply in other operations. Fortunately, I think I talked about the farmers one. Fortunately, also through our Tiger Foundation, and even also the schools where we are actually present in terms of the feeding schemes that we do. Historically, we were well known. So I'll say, no, don't worry. I will support you. We'll come and do a CSI initiative. And then my fellows show up with baskets of food. That's not sustainability for me, right? Because then you are dependent on me for life, right? I'm not saying we've managed to fully stop it, and I doubt we'll actually fully stop it because people are also accustomed to it and also take into account the tough economic and social times. But the good thing is that in the feeding schools that we're at, the CSI guys have actually managed to go and get those schools to get into food gardens, right? What we then do is actually work with our agricultural guys to actually give them the seedling, right? So it encourages them to do that. Working with some of the small, medium enterprise farmers. So you'll be actually horrified, the amount of raw materials from fresh commodities that we still actually import. Simple things that we should actually be getting locally, like tomatoes. Yesterday was the hot break, cold break argument that I was having with the guys around all go tomato sauce, right? Yeah, peanuts, beans, and whatever, right? We have so much land, and there's such big opportunity. So that's some of the things, and we've signed a memorandum of agreement. I can't remember what the department is called now, right? But at the time when I signed it was DAF, but it's changed a lot in terms of what are we going to do around the agricultural space and the offtake arrangements and agro-processing arrangements, right? Which also puts us under pressure because these things, if you worked with me or Tiger for some time, you'll know that we don't like paying. So DTI is a great friend of mine. So anything that I do, I have to make sure that I deliver energy savings, some sort of sustainability things, and sort of social benefits are actually realized. One of the big opportunities that we still have, which I think we're still lacking on, is embracing energy and water-saving CIP systems. We're still investing in the wrong CIP system, which is quite unfortunate because also, again, because of the price differential. So it's a big opportunity area for us right now, which I'm hoping sooner rather than later will actually get through. Oh, second last slide, thank you. This is just an example of coming out of the assessment that was actually done. I think it was the Snacks and Treats facility, visibility in terms of where we're using water, right? And for us to actually then channel the guys accordingly in terms of what are the big opportunities depending on what your significant energy or water usage is. And then normally what we then do is they on a monthly basis, you have to send us a scorecard so that we actually understand how are you actually tracking and how are you progressing. Because sometimes at an operational level, they may not necessarily have the funding to invest in these things. Then we escalate it and actually bring it up to the supply chain exco to say, these guys are actually doing quite well. Maybe if we gave them a couple of other thousands of rands or whatever, they're tracking well, this is what they can evolve their project through into. So I just put this as an example, but this just gives an idea of some of the, I think, metrics that we would expect them to come back to us on once we've done an assessment or something like that, and how we're tracking in terms of their performance. So currently, what's our biggest focus area? I think enterprise was really, fried last year. So every time you try and deliver any sort of saving in enterprise, they ask for triple digit, if that's even possible. So it's quite a big focus area for us right now in terms of water and trying to see how do we learn from the best practice case studies that Kula has shared with us in terms of the Danish industry from a meat environment. Snacks and treats, and I think the snacks and treats one also, it's because there we don't actually have our effluent treatment plant. We're trying to also motivate towards getting a water treatment plant. Basically, snacks and treats, the Jacobs and Mobeni side, that's where we produce all our sweets. Anything that says beacon, Maynards, chocolates and everything. So you can just imagine it's quite a nightmare. We're not great friends with the municipality there. So it's really quite a big, big focus area of ours right now. Steam systems continues to be a focus area for us. We actually have quite a lot of boilers in our operations. So there's no way that we will actually ever dim the lights on either steam systems or sort of our CIP systems. We haven't gotten very much into sort of your HVAC or compressor, depending on where the noise is, but that continues to be really quite a critical area for us. And again, once again, the water treatment plants. That water stress by country map, the reason why I put it there is because I think for the first time this year, when we did the water disclosure program, my eyes literally popped out when I actually saw some of our operations where they're situated in terms of the 2040, 2030 already, from a water stress perspective, fundamental decisions need to be made to say, are we even still going to be there? Right? So 2018, Lutzville, which is a critical facility for us in terms of input material going into culinary space, right? They didn't run for the whole year. So from a conversion cost and as a result of drought, right? From a conversion cost perspective, we had to literally import everything that we would have got from Lutzville and Messina as an input material to raw material, so we were actually not profitable. Now, if we don't understand our water maps and actually what's happening, then we can't make those long-term decisions in terms of informed decisions. So it's quite it was a bit of an eye-opener. And I think we ran the scenarios quite differently, and ultimately we're coming out with just the same areas being really critical, high-risk areas for us. This is the last slide. So you'll notice in this slide, what I try to do is just give you a highlight of what are the savings that we've realized year on year at a group level, right? If you go into operational, you'll find that like a LAF, which is where we do our fruit, veg, and whatever, within a particular fiscal year, they would have delivered a water saving of 15%. But because we reported a group, I thought it made sense. I cannot give you 41 operations, right? And remember earlier on I said we look at both intensity and absolute water usage, right? I think about a year and a half ago, we had been mandated by some of the municipalities to say you actually have to reduce your water usage. And they were not talking intensity. They didn't care about intensity. They were talking absolute water reduction, right? Or else you were actually going to be faced with significantly higher tariff or penalty, right, being issued to you. So this just gives you an idea of how we've actually performed since we've been actually in this relationship or marriage with NCPC. And it's not only through just IWE, it's what we've done in terms of our RECP efforts, what we've done in terms of our energy management efforts, because in some of these areas, there's quite a lot of synergy, right? And I thought I would actually just share that with you. It's a relationship that excites me, and I'm hoping it continues, right, for an extended period. Thank you very much, guys. I'm really sorry. I'm not well, so I have to keep it very brief.